Welcome. Here we're going to look at how stress can feed on itself and what the alternative may be. Now, feeling stressed now and again is all part of the human experience, but where it gets more serious and potentially health threatening is when that stress becomes ongoing and longer term. So how can that happen? Well, let's imagine that you're feeling stressed and you look for reasons why you're feeling stressed, and it looks to you that it's what's going on around you. So it's the people, it's the events, it's the circumstances, or possibly a combination of any of those. So quite logically then, you try to change those outside factors. So you try and change the events or the circumstances or the people. And if you've ever tried this, and I guess you probably have, you'll find that actually there's not a great deal that's in your control. Most of those things you've got no control over. So you find that actually you are pretty powerless to change those outside factors. But in the attempt to do so, the other thing that can happen is that you inadvertently create collateral damage. In other words, in your efforts to change the outside circumstances, you create unintended consequences. And we'll look more at that in an example shortly. So there you are. You believe that your stress is caused by external circumstances, but you can't change them. So as well as feeling powerless, you may well feel like a victim. And because it looks as if you can't feel any better, in other words, you can't get rid of those stressful feelings until you change those circumstances, and you can't change them, you feel trapped. And that feeling of being trapped is just another ingredient to continue and reinforce those stressful feelings. So having resentful thoughts and feeling angry and trapped, it effectively begins to create more stressful feelings, and you begin to get into an ongoing loop. So when I say that stress can feed on itself, that's how that happens. And I'm sure we've all had experience of that. I know I have. In fact, for many years I saw that as the only option, that was the way it all worked. But actually there is another way, and a more truthful way of what's going on. So again, let's go on to that in a moment. But first of all, let's consider an example. So let's suppose then you're feeling stressed, and it looks like, as we said, that stress is coming from outside circumstances. So just for the sake of this example, let's say that's your boss. So your boss is doing something or not doing something, or has a particular habit which you believe is causing your stressful feelings. So again, it looks logical to try and change what your boss is doing. Now, there may be any number of which ways that look sensible to you to try and do that. You may have a meeting, a sit-down meeting with that person. You may try more indirect means to influence what they do. You may even escalate to making some kind of complaint or lodging a grievance. But again, if you've ever tried any of this, you'll know that the chances of success are pretty limited. And again, this collateral damage I mentioned earlier on can easily occur. So for example, with your boss, it could actually make the relationship more difficult. It could have a knock-on effect in other members of your team, and so on. So that's how it can look. But as I hinted earlier, there is an alternative. So let's go back to the beginning. You're feeling stressed. And this time, though, you see that your stressful feelings are coming from you, coming from within, not from outside. They're coming from inside. Specifically, that they're coming from your thinking. Now, I have done another video on the source of feelings, what causes our feelings, and you may want to check it out with the link here. But suffice to say in this video that stressful feelings, when we see they're coming from our own thinking, that's not an admission of weakness or judgment. It's simply an acknowledgement of a fact of life, that thinking causes feelings. And when we see that, we realise that there's no point in trying to change outside circumstances so we can feel better. And we'll come back to what we might do about outside circumstances in a little while. But we know that our feelings aren't caused by those outside circumstances. They're caused by our thinking. So then it makes sense to, as best we can, leave that thinking alone. Now, we may not be fully conscious of what that thinking is, but we are very conscious of the stressful feelings. So we know there's something going on there which is best to not dig into, not analyse, not try and get to the bottom of it. Just as best we can, as I say, leave it alone. Because the nature of thinking is, when we leave it alone, it moves on. It's a flow. And we know that. I mean, if I ask you now, what will you be thinking in 5 minutes' time? You won't be able to tell me, because you don't know. Who does? Because thinking naturally will flow. So in 5 minutes' time, you'll be thinking something different than you're thinking now. And that's a natural process. So if we leave the thinking alone that we're having when we're feeling stressed, that thinking will move along. And as a result, our stressful feelings will fade and be replaced by new feelings. And our mind will be clearer, because we won't be, or it won't be cluttered with that thinking that was causing the stress. Now, acting from a clear mind, we're much more likely to act intelligently, with wisdom and with more effectiveness than if we're acting from a mind that is stressed. And again, I think we intuitively know this. I mean, everybody's had that knee-jerk reaction to an email and want to blast off a reply, but intuition sort of suggests that may not be the best idea, and let your thinking move on. Chill a bit, as the phrase goes, which means that your thinking quietens down, your feelings change, and then you're able to reply to that email with more intelligence and with more chance of a good result. So that's the trajectory when we see what's really happening, rather than the illusion that our stressful feelings are caused by outside circumstances. And when we're not in the illusion, but we see more clearly what is really happening, then what we actually do, the action we take, is more likely to come from a clearer head and be more effective and successful. Now, I've presented those two options as sort of black and white a bit there, but actually the truth is that even when we have seen how it really works, we sometimes still get caught in the illusion. I know I do. And at some point, again, you come to see that you're caught in the illusion, and then you can leave your thinking alone and let it move on, and your feelings will move on too. And then with a clearer head, like I just said, whatever you then decide to do is much more likely to have a good outcome. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.